Good morning, Keller Williams, and welcome back to 66 Conversations with MAPS Coaches. I am blessed to be joined by a friend today, our brand new, or relatively brand new, you've been in the position now 60 plus days, VP of MAPS Coaching, Jen Davis. Jen, for those that don't know who you are, which I'm sure is fewer and fewer these days, why don't you do a quick introduction and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into your buyer-based objection.
Absolutely. So Marty, first of all, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. My name is Jen Davis. I have been with Keller Williams for 10 years, started as a buyer's agent, was on the team as a lead buyer specialist for 6 years, built out a team within a team. So created a space for a buy side part of the business. We were closing 225 units a year with myself, 2 showing agents, an EA, and an inside sales agent. And then I transitioned into the role of CEO for our team in Springfield, and then became a MAPS coach in 2016, still was running our team, doing all of those things. And then this year was announced as vice president of MAPS in June. So I think I'm coming up on my 90-day mark, and I am loving it.
Well, you look like you're having a great time, and we appreciate your leadership. So thank you for being an amazing leader for MAPS. We're definitely happy about that. I was thinking about it prepping for this call, the number of conversations that you have probably had with buyers, even those that you weren't able to help their family or that individual, it has to be in the tens of thousands, I can only imagine at this point, right?
You look at from all of the conversations from the first time you're doing lead generation to lead conversion to the actual appointment.
Yeah.
I think at one point in my life, I could have done it in my sleep. Yeah. I believe.
Yeah, and might have, for all we know, right? In that case,
may have. I probably was. It was a lot of units in a short period of time.
Yeah, that's I have a buyer consultation. You've already dropped one nugget just in our pre-call. I always talk about buyer consultations. You use the word strategy session, which I love, and I'm now reframing exactly how I think about buyer consultations as strategy sessions. So, worth the price of admission for me already. Perfect. The objection that we are kind of focusing on today. The buyer who says, Jen, I'm pre-qualified, I'm ready to go. And yet, I don't have a timeline. I'll buy a house when the right house comes along.
I love when I get that, because then I have the opportunity to say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I completely understand that. Can you talk me through how you're going to know when it's the right house? What's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? Are there certain things that you're picturing? And what we're trying to get to is the emotion behind it, the thought process of when are they going to know? Oftentimes I find with buyers that the reason they don't move forward quickly is not because of search criteria, it's timeline and motivation. Mm-hmm. And so what we want to do is, as soon as we're in rapport with the buyer during that strategy session, start lining out what's important to them about the house. What are their expectations? And then we want to go into, based on those expectations, when do they want to be there? What is important about that time frame? And so I'll go into something with a buyer and I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I completely understand that you're not in a hurry. And as soon as you find that right house, we're going to be able to move forward. What I want to make sure, though, is during this time, while we're searching for homes and looking for them, that I'm providing you a high level of customer service. And the only way that I can do that is to make sure that I meet or exceed your expectations on communication. So Marty, if you were my buyer, I would say, Marty, if you were buying a home in the next 30 days and you needed to be in that house in 30 days, no more than that, there were no other options that you had, I would say, okay, Marty, I want my motivation to match your motivation. And what I mean by that is, within this time period, anytime a house pops on the market that fits your criteria, I'm going to call you, I'm going to text you, I'm going to email you. I may send a honing pigeon your way to make sure that this house hit the market. Sure. Now, Marty, if you don't plan to buy or are not really wanting to move until after the first of the year, that level of communication is going to be overwhelming to you. Right. And vice versa. If in my head, I'm thinking he's got all the time in the world, Marty's not in a hurry to get there, and I'm only communicating with you once a week or once every couple of weeks, very quickly, you're going to be disappointed in how I'm showing up for you. So if you and I were to look at on a timeline scale, would you say you want to be in the home have to be in the home by Halloween? Or would you say, I really just need to be there by spring break of next year? And then we're going to work from there as a partnership to say, how do we backtrack that to when we should actually be in showings? Because the number one thing is, I want to meet you where you're at. I want my motivation to match your motivation. I want to show you properties when you're ready to move forward. I don't want you to be tired or frustrated or disappointed before we actually get to the point where you're prepared to buy a house.
Yeah, I love that, because it's literally, when you said it, it's, oh, I'll know. I'm like, that's all fine and well, but how will I know, right? Like, I am your partner in this experience, in this journey. I want to make sure that I'm delivering on everything that I promised. And yet, like you said, how often should I be emailing you? How do I know which ones to email you if this is just a feeling that you have and I'm not diving deep enough to really know? Some great qualifying kind of conversations in that strategy session is, okay, so what, I think you said, what does it look like, right? And kind of getting into it. If you did know, what would it be? Kind of those, get a little more and don't just be at surface level with them, right?
That's exactly right. And I think, that old saying, buyers are liars. It's so frustrating to me because I believe that that's an agent skill issue, not a buyer issue. When we determine their timeline and their motivation, that's when we determine where they're at in the funnel. If I catch a buyer at the top of the funnel, that's not going to, Gary often talks about it may take 18 months for them to come through that funnel. Well, I don't want to show them houses for 18 months. And so I think we've got to establish, where are they in that pipeline so that we know how to best serve them. Another great question to ask is, Marty, what's your plan B? And if you have a really detailed plan B, if you say, I'm going to live in my sister's house, in her basement, I can sleep on a couch, my kids can sleep in the guest room, all these other things.
Yeah.
Your plan B might be your plan A. And so we've got to, those are the qualifiers for buyers agents to lean in and say, I need to understand more about this buyer. What's their timeline really look like, so that we can make sure that we're providing a great level of customer service.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever asked that question transparently in 10 years of working with buyers. What's your plan B? And I can't see not asking it now moving forward, because you're absolutely right. Like, and I have had plan B happen. All of a sudden they just fall off the face, and turns out, they rented, or they stayed in their house, they renewed their lease, or they moved in with their uncle, or whatever it was. I just wonder, what if I had asked that plan B, what would that have looked like? Could I have saved my time in showing all of those homes? I think a lot of times agents get quote unquote burnt out on buyers. And it's because they show them so many homes, and it's because they didn't have some of these conversations early on, where it was, what's the plan B? What's your timeline? What is, what are the strategies? What is that when we know? How will you know conversation? So great.
That's right. It's why we changed that wording from buyer consultation to strategy session. It's a proactive approach to helping buyers. Yep. A lot of times people look at the success I've had with buyers. Marty, I had more failure than most people will have success. I think the first year we closed 225, I had like 35 homes fall through. That was expectations that I didn't set well in the strategy session. And so I look back and I think, how much time could I have saved by asking that one question? The deals that I had that fell apart were typically because the motivation wasn't necessarily tied to it. And there was some buyer's remorse that maybe came in, or that plan B was readily available. And you look at it and you're like, gosh, had I asked 5 more questions, we would have had maybe an easier, more productive outcome.
It's strategic for them. It's also strategic for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're being strategic about the best use of your time and your treasure and your, efforts and all of that. So yeah, changing my wording. Guys, think about it, right? No longer a buyer consult. And I'm going to tell them it's a strategy session when we go in. Hey, I'd like to meet so we can go through a buyer strategy session so we can make sure. And then now it's even, it's not just a consultation. We're going to set out a clear plan, a strategic plan, a purposeful plan to get you into that next house. And if, not all buyers are worth working with right now, not to say that they're not worth working with at some point, but you got to decide, where are you in that funnel? And if they're just all jumbled in there.
It's right. Craig Zuber, who's my MAPS coach, always says, hard conversation, easy life. Yeah. That's the strategy session. Have all the stuff up front, what to expect when they're making an offer, right? What it looks like to show houses, dig in on that timeline. Sure. If you spend an hour there and truly understand that buyer, they typically will really only look at 2 or 3 homes. There's no frustration. It works out seamlessly and it feels good for everybody in the end.
Yeah, love it. Any closing thoughts on that specific, well, we'll know it when we see it, objection for the buyer's agent out there watching this, wrap up with this video?
I think don't be afraid of it. I think when you hear an objection, lean in with the intention of understanding it. You know, it's just a conversation. And it doesn't have to be stilted. It is very much, right? Like my personality is in there, right? Like the honing pigeon part of it. That's my personality. Something else may work for someone else. Be authentic, come from curiosity, and ask genuine questions. I find that buyers don't love why level questions, right? It puts them almost on the defensive. So I would stick with a what or a how. How will you know? What will that look like? And that would be my advice. Just be you.
Love it. Guys, easy to see why she's been one of the most successful buyer's agents we've had in the company and earned the right of VP of Maps. Jen, thank you for your time. I know you're extremely busy. We really appreciate you sharing some of it with us. Guys, you know the drill. Come back tomorrow for a new Maps coach and a new conversation. We'll look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thanks again, Jen.
Thank you.